My name's Seth Noggle. I'm the Director of Youth and Family Ministry at Trinity Lutheran Church in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. I've been working here for 10 years, a little over 10 years now, and I got this job when I was only 22 years old. I was working at a nonprofit in the city of Pittsburgh known as the Pittsburgh Project. And then a youth group from the church that I'm now working at Trinity came to Pittsburgh, and I met with them and I met with the pastor at the time, and they really sold me on the place, and so I applied for this position. And the way I got this job was some of this was through a capital campaign that Trinity did, because when they talked about things at their church, what they were really passionate about, one of the things they talked about was that they wanted to invest in youth at Trinity. So in my tenure here, ways that our ministries have changed is we've definitely done more outreach, and we work together with more churches in our area. We just believe that that's a really important thing while doing this ministry. Also, obviously, as a lot of us are aware, churches are growing smaller. And so in some facts, we've just kind of teamed up with other churches also just to have a more fleshed out ministry and do better outreach. So as far as our Vacation Bible School, we team up with the local UCC church, one of the local UCC churches in our town. And we've been doing that together for roughly 5 years. We also, with our youth group, we team up with the other local Lutheran church that's in our town, St. John's Lutheran, and I also work as their youth pastor. And so we have a great group of kids from both who have kind of gotten to know each other and learned about each other, and it's been a really great, thriving ministry by doing that. I also help with a campus ministry that our church is strongly connected with, and that's called the Lutheran Center. And that's right at our college, which is Kutztown University. And we can house up to 6 students there. So we also do kind of a ministry of community living, of Christian community living there. We do meals with that group. And then we also every Wednesday night have just a ministry there where we do a free meal for anyone who wants to attend. Alongside of that, also at the Lutheran Center, we also have a student food pantry that feeds roughly 100 kids a week. So also though, not only internally, but I also try to do several ministries that kind of outreach and do broader work in our community. So some of those involve, I am on the board for a nonprofit known as Kutztown Strong, which stands for Strengthening the Resolve of the Next Generation. When talking about Kutztown Strong, you also kind of have to talk about a hard history in our area. So roughly about 7 years ago, several students overdosed on drugs. And this led to a lot of fear and some panic among the communities of what was happening to our younger generations. So groups were formed, community members came together in a way that was really powerful. And so when they all came together, some things that grew out of that were talks about needs for things for kids to do outside of school, especially living in a rural area. Oftentimes kids get bored, and when kids are bored, it can be easier to slip into things that aren't appropriate or not good for them. And one of also those things that kind of came from Kutztown Strong, but also the conversations, was Oasis, which is this after-school ministry that happens Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays of every week. That started roughly 7 years ago and was started by several local churches in the area. Many evangelical and mainline churches work together. It started out in literally a part of a library, and now we have our own building that's shared with a church, and we have a great yard where we do a lot of activities and all that stuff. The volunteer base is multiple churches in our community that show up. And we get roughly about 20 kids on the day I'm there, which is Thursdays. And overall, we've seen over 100 kids show up just in this year. So the great thing about Oasis is I really do feel like it's changing some of those kids' lives. And not only that, I think it's also changing the volunteers' lives. In a lot of ways, it's exactly this. It's a relationship. It's coming together, it's building trust. Some of these kids come from great homes, some of these kids don't. And so there's students that come to this after-school program that has taken years for me to finally break down walls with them. And on its face, it doesn't say ministry, but ministry is deep into the DNA of it. And so it's a ministry that is building relationships constantly with middle school and high schoolers as hopefully they go throughout their school career. What I see for the future of these ministries is ultimately what I think also should be the future for the church. I once heard that if the church is not a missional church, then it's not the church. And so I really believe that the church is doing its best work when it's outside of the buildings. I often say that youth ministry, especially like missional work, is not profitable. I've gotten several kids who now come to my youth group who I've met through Oasis, and those kids and their families most likely might never step their foot into a Sunday worship. But for those kids, that youth group, that Oasis has become their church. That's where they commune, that's where they see people who are meaningful to them, that's where they have faith conversations. And so I think when we're looking forward, I think we really need to be asking ourselves, how do we do church outside of our walls? And so what that looks like is sometimes I think humbling ourselves and working with other churches, even if it means maybe they get some more of the spotlight sometimes. It means working with kids even when it means that we might not ever see their family's money. And so I think it ultimately means caring for our community as if they're a part of the church, even when they're not in our walls.